and welcome to episode 8 of One Cardinal, One Cub, and One Beer. And welcome to Receding Hairline Night. As you can see, I'm not wearing a hat.
Yeah, that's right.
Another flaw you can see is that my glasses are not on my ears, because if I drop them on my ears, there's a big glare. So that's something I learned in photography. So you see that I'm not the perfect human being you thought I was. So JJ, how you doing?
Doing great, having a blast. It's been I'll tell you what, on the Cardinal front, Arenado staying. Huh? That's good news. I've never heard opt in. I always heard opt out. I heard you have an opt out clause, you can opt out. Most people opt out. He opted in, and that's great. I don't know what him and Mo talked about, but he must have liked what he heard. So I'm excited to see what happens. Mo says they're going to spend some more money. And for both the Cardinals and the Cubs this week, the gold gloves came out.
Yes.
And congratulations on your player. We had Arenado, which don't want to sound braggadocious, but kind of knew that was going to happen, his 10th. And then we had the utility player, Brendan Donovan, got his very first gold glove. So way to go, Cardinals. And I'll let you talk about your man on your side.
I thought Happ was going to win. Of all the left fielders I've seen, he was easily the best this year, and his metrics showed that he was far and away the best left fielder in the National League. So it didn't surprise me any. I'm very happy for him. He's had a long climb to get to where he is now. He started with such a hot rookie year. I think he had like 24 home runs, and they expected a lot out of him to be the leadoff hitter. It didn't work out to be the leadoff hitter. He was sent down at one time. It's just been a rough, choppy first 4 years of his major league career. And this year, they just said, you're going out to left field every day and just do what you do. Because you always saw the ingredients there, that this is a special ball player. You just never saw it come together. So you look at his raw numbers, what we call the back of the baseball card numbers, and they're nothing, special. He didn't hit 20 home runs this year. He didn't drive in 100. But when you look at, like OPS and some of the other metrics, he's a very good player. His WAR is really good. I can't remember it off the top of my head. But this defensive leap forward, I didn't see this coming. So he was deserving, and I'm very happy. So good job, Ian Happ. Before we go any further, I do want to remember to say this. I put a few videos in the comments of the YouTube channel. So if you have not, we talked about Albert Bosky last week, not seen some of his antics, go look at that. I put a few weeks ago, I put a Dave Kingman commercial because he actually did a 7-Up commercial. So you can view those, and they're also going to be on our Facebook and our Twitter. But I do want to implore you at the bottom right of the screen, for those of you who are watching on Mac, PC, on your phone, you'll see the emblem, and I should have an arrow pointing to it. Just click that, subscribe to our page, and then spread the word, spread the gospel of One Cardinal, One Cub, and One Beer. So I got the commercial thing out of the way. What did you think about Donovan winning as a utility player?
I actually thought Tommy Edman was going to win it, because I thought he played much better. I saw the metrics on him. MLB channel was talking about he should be the front runner, but I think it kind of hurt him being eligible at 2 positions. You know what I mean? I think he kind of split, because he was up for second base, and I didn't think he'd get that, but I thought he'd get the utility player, and he played a lot of positions too. So I was a little surprised. I'm glad a Cardinal won it. It's great for his. I think he's the only Cardinal rookie to win a Gold Glove. Of course, they had to make a special category for him to get that Gold Glove, but we'll take it. We'll take it nonetheless. But that was a little surprise right there. I got a question for you, Vince. And I don't know. This is kind of how I feel with the leagues having the same all have a DH. They have the same rules now. they're playing a same schedule. They're going to play a level schedule next year. Should there be two MVPs, two Cy Youngs, all these different Gold Gloves? I know they will, because there's money involved in contracts, and it always goes, you just follow the money. But really, it's just one big league now with just divisions. And I don't know. Before, Gibson would only face McCovey and these guys, and the American League guys never saw those guys. But now everybody's on an even playing field. I always heard too that umpires used to call in the American League a higher strike than in the National League. I don't know that to be a fact, but what do you think about that with them all playing the same schedule pretty much now?
I didn't think I would like interleague play when it first 25 years ago when it first came up. But then when I saw the Cubs and the White Sox play, I thought, yeah, I can handle
special.
this. I liked how they did it to where you would rotate, like you would only play the American League East teams one year. The next year you do the Central, the next year they kind of rotated things. I don't like the balanced schedule because it is one big league now. And you're right, because of money, they're going to, the players union is not going to say, okay, we're only going to do one MVP and one Cy Young. They'll say, no way, we have a lot of contracts with incentives in it. And this gives people a much better chance of winning something and getting some money. Speaking of getting some money, let me parenthetically say that after I won the 1.2 billion tonight, I will still continue to do the podcast. I don't want you to think I'm going to big time anything. And I don't even play the lottery until it hits $1 billion, because is it even worth the effort to go out and get the ticket if it's only $900 billion? No.
That. Yeah.
So anyway, back on topic. I like the interleague play to be just kind of a sampling, because it was special. Every 3 years you would see like Ken Griffey Jr. come to town, or Mike Trout or something like that. Now we're just going to play everybody. We're going to play the way I understand it, we're going to play the Tampa Bay Rays and the Oakland Athletics as many times as we play the St. Louis Cardinals.
Oh man. I know. I don't like that.
Doesn't sound riveting to me.
No.
Although I do like watching Oakland games, because there's not a big crowd, but man, they have a lot of fun. They got the drum going out there, and
oh yeah,
it's kind of fun to watch the A's play. So. In other Cubs news, we fired our hitting coach Greg Brown. We replaced him with Dustin Kelly. The reason we did this was because the team was a league bottom 230 hitting team with runners in scoring positions. I alluded to this last week. Maybe I just outright said it. I don't remember. Hitting coaches, it's the whipping boy.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, there are many players who don't even listen to the hitting coach. Who was it? Colby Rasmus that only listened to his dad. He
was a big part of it.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons they got rid of him, was because he kept going to his dad. His dad was his hitting coach. And I think there are hitting coaches that from yesteryear who, Mike Easler, for example.
Charlie Lau. Charlie Lau used to work with Brett and Boggs.
I'm talking about players who played in the 70s and 80s who then coached into the sabermetrics time, who didn't quite fit in. And because now you really don't need a hitting coach. You just need an analyst to say you need to swing this way to get better launch angles, so on and so forth, and strike out 200 times because we don't care, because you're going to run into 30 home runs. That's the philosophy now. So I don't think the 230 batting average with runners in scoring position was the hitting coach's fault. I think it was more or less we didn't have a whole lot of talent when it came to hitting. I mean, we had a good season, especially the second half, but it was all pitching, So we just don't have great hitters. And when you don't have great hitters, the hitting coach sucks. you have great hitters. The hitting coach is great. But you brought up Charlie Lau, who's my favorite hitting coach of all time.
Me too.
I actually got the book when I was a kid. I think it was called The Art of Hitting 300. And it had a little flip thing where you could watch George Brett. Like, it was kind of a cool book.
Like a movie.
Yeah. And he got fired because he was accused of being, you don't teach players to hit for extra bases and home runs, because his whole thing was you're going up the middle. That's your swing, go up the middle. But when you look at some of his proteges, Brett hit 30 home runs a few times. Hal McRae had some power. It wasn't Al Cowens, who was a journeyman, one year was second in MVP for the Royals, and that's because Charlie Lau really got a hold of him for a year. And Charlie Lau's successor, Walt Reniak, who was the hitting coach for the White Sox for a while, and another few teams. After Reniak left, there's nobody who's doing that philosophy anymore. That Charlie Lau hit through the ball, go up the middle, perfect balance. And that was a hitting coach to me. And what you got now is just
grip it,
people who's going to get fired. What's your take on hitting coaches?
Remember in the old days, there weren't that many coaches. Now there's bullpen coaches, bench coach. You always had your first base, third base. There was always a pitching coach and a hitting coach, but now there's so many coaches, and a lot of times teams have two hitting coaches. I guess you blame two guys. I know John Mayberry used to be with the Cardinals. I know he was out in Kansas City with Matheny as a hitting coach, but I think they had two hitting coaches even then. So with all the video and everything, I know they talk about their strategies and how they're going to attack each pitcher and things like that. But I do think, man, they've went heavy on the hitting on the coaches at all. Back in the old days, it seemed like they did just fine with four, but now with all the videotape, and there's people who have jobs just who do the video part of it and make pretty good money. And actually, that's the job to get into, because nobody ever blames you for all the knowledge you bring to them. It's always the final result.
Yeah.
So hitting coaches is just a tough spot. But I would hear Cardinal fans, when I would talk to them, say they got to get rid of that hitting coach. I said, is he that bad? And they said, well, he's cheap. I mean, they had so things they didn't even know. They were complaining. They got him because they didn't want to pay for a real coach or anything like that. So I don't know how to do that, but that was the one guy they always would blame, was the hitting coach, because it seemed like the Cardinals struck out a lot. We didn't come up big with two outs, but I looked at the stats and we were in the top half in a lot of those statistics, but people just went to a game or watch them on TV, and you can't, you're only successful. You're very good if you only are successful 30% of the time. And I just think they, at the end of the game, if you don't come through with a hit, it's that darn hitting coach, That's how I feel about him. That's a tough job.
Yeah.
Scapegoat. Yeah.
By the way, I do want to mention you are sporting a very nice Brock umbrella.
Oh, thank you. This old thing right here. Oh yeah. I thought I'd bring it out of the closet. For all you Lou Brock fans, this is a 70s item. It was called the Brockabella, and it came in like a little batting sleeve, and it had a picture of Lou taking pictures in the Brockabella. And I thought I was the coolest thing in the neighborhood. I'd be out mowing the grass. Hey. Oh man, but I thought I'd show this. This was an actual thing in the 70s. They had the Lou Brock umbrella, the Brockabella, and if you were really good, you had the Lou Brock soda, the Brocka Pop. I don't know if you remember that.
I do not.
Was
it any good?
No, it was like cotton candy, real sugary, kind of a cotton candy. I'm going to find a can of it and bring it on here one day. But thank you. And I also want to say this. We have the best listeners. I've always said, Vince, every time I talk to you, we got the best listeners. I always say that. This week, I got a few items, and I'm not out there trolling for people to send stuff, but a listener who loves the show knew there's the Cardinals give away garden gnomes. Kind of thought it was a dumb thing, and I ended up getting a few of them. And I found out from a real guy who deals with memorabilia, that there's 4 of them. And my good friend Tony Pruno got me the Whitey Herzog garden gnome. So I have all 4 of them now. So thank you out there. You don't have to send anything to me and Vince, but if people at Chrysler are listening, we really like to drive the Chrysler car.
I made a mistake last week, and I do want to correct it. I brought up Walter No Neck Williams, and I said that he played for the Phillies, and I was thinking about another player.
Oh.
He played for Houston, the White Sox, the Indians, and the Yankees, had a 10-year career. And I do have a picture of him on our Twitter and on our Facebook. And I don't know if I put him in the comments of the YouTube page, the YouTube channel, but I did a little digging because he does have an odd appearance. I showed him to my wife. My wife's like, whoa. His odd physical appearance was the result of a typhus injection he received as a baby. True story.
I did not know
His
that.
hometown was hit with a flood. And so the government came by and gave typhus injections to prevent the spread of the disease. As a baby, he was so muscular that they couldn't reach a vein except in the back of his neck. Because of this injection he got as a baby to get to a vein in the back of his neck, he developed a crick in his neck, which then stiffened and shrank his neck. That's why his head is sitting right there, and that's the nickname No Neck Williams.
And that picture did him justice. I was like, oh yeah, okay, now I see it. I did not know that guy before, though.
Walter has recently passed away. I think it was 2020 he's passed away. He has a grandson who plays in the NFL, I believe. He's got a lot of athletes in his family. So fascinating character.
Yes.
Well, what do you think of the World Series so far?
I'm loving it. The Phillies are just, as we speak right now, we're going into game 4. We had a rain out the other night, so it got pushed back.
Benefiting the Phillies.
It looks so, but sometimes when you're going good, you don't want a day off, but you want your guys to get rest because they're going for it. I mean, this time of year, you ain't got nothing to hold back. Go for it. It's been great. Now, we're going to talk later about a Cardinal team, but this reminds me of that 64 year the Cardinals and the Yankees played. We started in St. Louis, they started in Houston. The Phillies won game 1, they came back. Houston's hitting the Phillies aces. They're hitting them. The first game, you get in a spot where your great players, the future Hall of Fame players, I don't know if you give them a little more time, but they left Verlander in a little too long, as we're playing Monday Day quarterback looking back, but they gave him more time because he's Justin Verlander, and the Phillies came back. But in game 2, they jumped out 5-0 and they went to the bullpen, so they split. They go to Philadelphia, and I'm telling you what, that is a wild crowd. That's intimidating as another player, that crowd. And they just came out and pulverized with 5 home runs on the Astros.
When I saw that game 3 was going to be started by Noah Syndergaard, who is no longer Thor. He's not even Loki. He is a very average pitcher now. And that was going to be a bullpen game for Philadelphia because Suarez was not ready to go. So it looked really good for Houston going into Philadelphia. That rain out allowed them to reset their staff. Suarez pitched great last night. Bullpen came in and finished up strong. They look like a softball team. I sent my son a text and said, this looks like a softball game. Well, one team looked like a softball team. And my gosh, two things I want to say about the Phillies. Number one, Bryce Harper, he's worth the contract.
Oh yeah.
In comparison, I'm not saying anybody's worth 30 million a year to play baseball. I'm just saying in comparison with other players with big contracts, he shows up and he's intense. And I do think that uh gosh, McCullers, I do think that he was tipping his pitches last night. And I think that's what Harper told Bohm. Yeah, I think that's what he told him. Look for this. He's tipping his pitches. And then Bohm hit that out. So you got a guy who's not just a great player who's intense, but he's pretty much a coach on the team that the younger players look up to. Second thing I want to say is, golly gee, I have always been amazed at Schwarber's power. When he never hits a cheap home run, they're always going, I think they're going to land on another planet. And they just really made Houston look bad. Nola had a bad start, and he's starting tonight. So I'm hoping he rebounds with the crowd behind him. And I would like to see this series go 7 games.
Oh, that'd be great.
If the Phillies win tonight, it's going to be very difficult to bounce back from a 3-1 deficit when you still got one more game without crowd. So I'm enjoying the World Series.
I am too.
And I'm jumping on the Phillies bandwagon because I crapped on them to begin with, and I feel like I owe it to them. But I do want to see Dusty get it, but I got to pull for the Phillies.
Isn't it something? 162 games, the Phillies up and down, inconsistent, moments of greatness. You could see it. Their team had what it took, but they just were, it's so inconsistent, up and down. Then they hit the playoffs, just that big win against the Cardinals, and that game 1, and now they've been rolling through Atlanta, San Diego, and Houston was good all year. And it's odd that the Phillies just somehow went into another stratosphere during the playoffs. And,
yeah,
it's exciting. It's a great story, and Bryce Harper is cementing himself as a legend of the game now. He's had a great career, some up and downs too, but this is one of those moments that in Philadelphia, they'll build a statue of him outside that stadium now.
Right next to Rocky.
Right next to Rocky.
Well, JJ, you alluded to it. We're going to highlight 2 World Series, one from each team. You had a lot to pick from. I didn't. So this may be the last time we can really do this segment. But it is World Series time. So you're going to talk about the 64 World Series. Let us know what happened.
Oh, the 64 World Series. This was a great moment. This was a turning point in baseball. There's 2 books I recommend about the 1964 season. Back in the 90s, there was a book by David Haberstein. He's a Pulitzer Prize winning author, October of 64. And that's a great book. And it's more like the symbolism of the season and the changing of the game. And then Ron Jacober, who used to be a sports anchor on Channel 5 out of St. Louis, has a more of a picture book called 64 Cardinals. And I recommend both of those books quite a bit.
Is Jacober still with us?
I believe so. He wrote this book, came out a couple of years ago. As far as I know, in 2020, he was still with us. The last 2 years I can't vouch for it.
I used to manage a pest control company in the 90s, and we did houses out in Chesterfield, the nice areas. And so I got to do a lot of the termite inspections and jobs with athletes and people of that ilk. The neatest house I've ever been in is Ron Jacober's. His basement was a museum, pristine. And here I am looking for signs of termites in what I feel like is the Louvre. I'm like, my gosh, I don't want to. But anyway, go ahead.
Oh no, that's cool. I would have loved to seen that. But 64, the reason I mentioned that is this is really the end of the Yankee dynasty. from 1921 to 1964. And I'll go over some of the stats in a minute, because I know we're just supposed to be talking about the World Series, but I want to kind of set the table. In 1964, these were kind of some of the things going on. February 9th, one of the most important days of my time, was the 5 biggest words ever spoken, ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles. So the Beatles come to the United States in February 9th. Spring training starts right after that. Shows that came on TV that year: Gilligan's Island, Jeopardy, Addams Family, Bewitched. Kind of setting the mood there. If you see old photographs of the 64 season, you'll see people in suits. They got white shirts with black ties. The women have, hats on. It was kind of a special time. The players, so I have some stats here. Let's see. In 63, the Cardinals finished second place. They were 9, and back then there was no divisions. It was just the National League, American League, 10 teams. The Cardinals finished second in 1963. They were 93 and 69, and they lost the division to the Dodgers, who went on to beat the Yankees in the World Series that year. But it was the last year Stan the Man Musial. And, he was with us from 41 to 63, and he missed 2 years for World War II. So saying goodbye to a great player. But in 1963, the Cardinals had the all-star infield: Bill White, Julian Javier, Dick Groat, Kenny Boyer. I don't ever remember another time when the whole infield was the same team. So they were coming back for 1964. And so here's some of the stats on the Yankee dynasty. From 21 to 63. And, we can appreciate this, Vince, because you're a Cub fan and I'm a Cardinal fan. And these Yankee fans are saying, like you said a couple of weeks ago, we deserve more than this. It's our, and I'm like, what? And you said the same thing. They were in 29 World Series in those 43 years, and they won 20 and lost 9. But still, they were in 29 World Series.
Unbelievable.
And going in, and if you really want to, and so that's Ruth to Mantle right there, with all these great players, and they had a kind of a system and an organization there. But from 47 to 64, they were in 15 World Series and was 10 and 5. And going into that season, they had been in the last 4 World Series and won 2 and lost 2. They had went through. So in 60, now we're going to 1964. Yogi Berra is their manager. And 4 years ago, it was the end of the Casey Stengel era. Ralph Honk had a couple of years where he managed him. He managed around in baseball too. So a lot of old timers know that name, Ralph Honk, and then Yogi Berra. So they had 3 Hall of Famers on their team: Yogi Berra, Mickey Mantle, and Whitey Ford. And we had 2 future Hall of Famers on our team, Lou Brock and Bob Gibson. And they show you like how the baseball at the time, the Cardinals' average attendance that year was 14,115 people, But the Yankees, the biggest city in the, in the country, their fans, they only had 16,119 per game. And I threw the Cubs in there for you, Vince, 9,280. So, that was just how the games were going on that year. And the Cardinals, I'm going to name some of these names. And this was basically our starting lineup that year. It was Tim McCarver, great analyst, and also known as Steve Carlton's personal catcher. Great player. He hit 288 that year, but he only hit 9 home runs. But a great catcher. Bill White, future National League president.
Yes.
Yeah, Bill White. Julian Javier. Dick Groat, who we got from Pittsburgh and played 3 years with the Cardinals. Kenny Boyer, who maybe one day might be in the Hall of Fame. I don't know. He might be like that borderline guy, but gosh darn it. And he was the MVP that year. And he hit 295 with 24 home runs and 119 RBIs that year. So Kenny Boyer, and played top-notch defense. Our outfield that year was Brock, Flood, and Mike Shannon. And our pitching staff, here's some names too. And of course, Mike Shannon, all Cardinal fans know the old Irish Mike Shannon from broadcasting days, but he was a great player too. And he was from the St. Louis area. We had Gibson, Roger Craig, who later was a manager, Mike Cuellar, who was a famous pitcher with the Orioles when they all had 4 20-game winners. which I don't know if we'll ever see that again. Kurt Simmons was another great pitcher. And on our bench, we had Johnny Lewis, who later was a hitting coach, and the incredible Bob Euchre. The Uke was a part of that team. And our reliever was Barney Schultz, who threw a knuckleball. And of course, they said, "Hey, Euchre, how do you catch the knuckleball?" He says, "I just wait for it to stop rolling and I walk over and pick it up." So that was the Cardinal team right there. And it was a really extraordinary year. And Haverstein had made this analysis. The Yankees were this old school team, veterans, and they didn't just have to sustain that. The young guys they brought up really didn't carry that torch. They were good players, but not great players. But the Cardinals were a young team, and they were a lot of diversity on the team. We had white players, African Americans, and Hispanic players. And it was kind of the change in times of that, I believe, because the Yankees, they did have Elston Howard on their team, their catcher, but it was basically old white guys. And I think they hung on to their stars a little long. Some of their stars, they had Jim Bouton, ball four.
Yeah.
Remember Jim Bouton? Yeah. I like going through these rosters because some of these, like we talk about current times, most people still recollect the rosters. But Bouton was on that team. Al Downing, who gave up Hank Aaron's 214th home run, was on that staff. Whitey Ford was still around. Mel Stoudemire, who later became a pitching coach, and we had his son Todd Stoudemire on the Cardinals for a while, and Ralph Terry, and then Clete Boyer, Ken Boyer's brother. That's a nice storyline, brother versus brother. And Tony Kubek, Joe Pepitone, Bobby Richardson, of course, Mantle, Roger Maris, and Tom Tresh were on that team. So these were just star-studded teams. Now, the Yankees only won their division by one game. They beat the White Sox. And they thought it was a birthright to be in the World Series, and it pretty much was up to that point. But the Cardinals, this was an incredible year. At one time, I wrote down these dates and everything, and at one time, they were, I believe it was June 17th, the Cardinals were in 8th place, and they were 10 games out of first place. And, we're getting near the All-Star game, and we're an 8th place team. Nobody really thought we were going to make a big run at it. We brought up a kid from the minors named Mike Shannon, and he really played great defense, brought a lot of life to the team. In July, and the Phillies were running away with the division. They just looked like a powerhouse that year. July 24th, we had moved up to 7th place, but Bill White started having some shoulder problems. And little by little, at the trading deadline, Augie Bush said, "We need some speed. We got to have somebody with some speed." And the Cardinals made it. I know, I can see it on your face. The Cardinals made a 6-player deal with the Cubs for Lou Brock. And I'm wearing the Brockabella in honor of my fellow Arkansan and one of the greatest Cardinals, Lou Brock. And, people say, well, Lou's defense was a little suspect. All right, maybe.
They didn't make an Ernie Broglio umbrella, so I didn't wear one.
No, but when we traded him, I did not know that the year before he was 18-8.
Yeah, he was a good pitcher.
He was good, but he went over to Chicago. I don't know what happened, but he didn't. He had like that season and 2 more, and it was just kind of a 500 pitcher. He didn't really light it up. So what a steal. And when Lou came over here, I have some stats on Lou. Lou hit an amazing where's he at? Lou hit he was still on bases, but I had a stat on him and I can't find it now, that he hit in the high 300s. And he just was a catalyst for the team, him and Flood at the top of that lineup. And good batting average, always on base, very daring. Of course, he became the greatest base stealer of all time until Ricky Henderson broke his record. But the Cardinals just kind of set it up. August 23rd, we were 11 back, and we had moved into 4th place. September 20th, we were tied for 2nd place, and we were 6.5 games back. September 20th, the Phillies were so sure they were in the World Series that they started selling World Series tickets September 20th. And Mike Shannon said this on the last day of the season, if everything worked out, there would have been a 4-way tie for first place. but the Phillies had fell to second place to the Reds and the Cardinals, and they had to play the Phillies and the Reds had to play each other, and we had the Mets, who in 1964 the Mets weren't that good. We ended up winning the division by a single game. And now it's the World Series time, and I won't take a whole long time with this, but this World Series made Bob Gibson a legend. And he pitched game 2. Now down the stretch, he was pitching on 3 days rest, coming out of the bullpen. In recent days, I've seen CC Sabathia did that, I think, with the Brewers.
Yes.
And Randy Johnson did that with the Astros. They had him for 1 year. And they just ran him into the ground, and he got him there. He got him to the promised land. The Cardinals did that with Gibson, and I saw an interview with him, and he said, "Oh, I was hurting every day." But he said, "I couldn't let down my teammates." And he went out there and he rock and rolled. So now they used him in the last game of the season to get to the World Series. He pitches game 2 on like 3 days rest and goes 8 innings, but the Cardinals lose. Let me find those stats real quick. I had written that down. So in game 2, we lose 8-3, but it's a real close game, but he goes 8 innings, and then the Yankees tear us up in the 9th and win the game 8-3, but he went 8 innings. He comes back and pitches game 5. So there's game 3, a day off, game 4. So he's on 3 days rest, and he pitches a 10 inning. He pitches 5-2. We win the game in 10 innings. He only had 2 walks and 13 strikeouts, a 10 inning complete game. Well, we go to game 7. Bob, we need you. Bob goes back out there on 2 days rest. Well, yeah, on 2 days rest. And the Cardinals win 7-5, and he goes 9 innings and gets the win. And Tim McCarver said there's a stat that he was told about the last 90 innings of the season, World Series and down the stretch. Bob Gibson threw 39 innings of the last 90 innings. That he threw 39 of them.
Wow.
And his last game was a complete game. There's only one other guy in the history of baseball who has that stat. Now I heard this about 5 years ago, and I don't think anybody's broke that record since or tied it. The other player was Dizzy Dean of the Cardinals in 1934. So anyway, how about that? So that's my year, 1964. Watch the games. It's just the fundamentals. Dick Groat, great shortstop. Curt Flood, an incredible center fielder who later kind of sacrificed the end of his career for free agency. And that's also another story we'll have to tell another day, because I can't get into that just for a short time. But Curt Flood, a big part of Major League Baseball. Kurt Simmons, Bill White. I could go on. And Mike Shannon had a short career, but in 63 or 64, he was a big part of that, us getting over the hump. And after that, the Yankees did not see the World Series until 1976, and when they lost to the Reds, but then won in 77, 78, went back in 81. So I really think the Yankees have had 5 like dynasty years, periods in their time. But I'm not crying for the Yankees. We beat them that year, and I'm pretty proud of that. So 1964, I hope I did it justice. And if you can, read the Haberstein book and the Ron Jacober book, you'll get a lot of great pictures. Bob Gibson was the MVP. Kenny Boyer was MVP of the season, Bob Gibson of the World Series. And there's a picture of him leaning over the car that he won, that they gave away for being the MVP of the World Series. So anyway, that's 1964 World Series. Thank you.
Well, I could have picked the 2016 Cubs or the 2016 Cubs. So I chose the 2016 Cubs. I'll set the stage with this 2015. We had gotten Lester in free agency, which was a big coup because he was the top pitcher. We did not look like we were ready to contend. Everybody knew that we had talent in the minor leagues. That was well known in baseball. And what Theo Epstein did was he sold Lester, and they'd worked together in Boston, but he sold Lester on Chicago by creating a video of Lester winning the World Series, pitching for the World Series and winning the World Series for the Cubs. I don't know how he did the video, but Theo's got the money to do it. So Lester comes in 2015. We are a better team in 2015. We are about 500. And at the end of July, in 2015, we were no hit by Cole Hamels. So after that, we went 46-20, and we almost caught a very good Cardinals team for the division. We made the playoffs as a wild card team. That first wild card game against Pittsburgh, the only wild card game at that time, Jake Arrieta actually tortured the Pittsburgh fans, saying, it ends right here, and you just don't see that on social media from baseball players. And then he went out and backed it up and shut out Pittsburgh. And then we beat the Cardinals in the playoffs. And for people like me who are Cub fans living in St. Louis, that was probably a little sweeter than winning the World Series. So then we ran into the Mets in the National League Championship Series, and it was apparent we just did not have the hitters that could put contact on a ball when there was all that heat, because the Mets at that time had Syndergaard when he was Syndergaard. They had Harvey when he was pitching great. They had a young DeGrom. They were throwing BBs, and they just beat us 4-0, and we didn't have a shot. So we knew we had some work in the offseason, but we knew we were very, very close. So what we did in the offseason on December 4th, we signed John Lackey he was playing for the Cardinals. We signed him to be 4th, 5th starter, which proved to be beneficial to us because he could eat up innings. He was not the all-star anymore, but he fit the role perfect. December 8th, this really marked a shift in where the team was heading. We sent Sterling Castro to the New York Yankees. That was important because Castro was supposed to be a building block in the early 2010s, and he was an all-star. He was our all-star. And now we're to a point where we're saying, okay, we can get rid of you because we've got better talent coming up than you. December 9th, we signed Ben Zobrist, and this is going to really help because Ben Zobrist puts the bat on the ball no matter who's pitching. And he had just come from winning a world championship when the Royals played the Mets, and he hit well in that World Series against that Mets staff. So we said, we need you here. So we signed him as a free agent. Then we signed former St. Louis Cardinal outfielder Jason Hayward. And it always fascinates me how short-term memories some people have. They say, oh, you guys got ripped off. We were smart. We didn't sign Hayward. The Cardinals offered Hayward more money than the Cubs did. He wanted to come to the Cubs because when they beat the Cardinals in the playoffs, and this is just a different philosophy from the Cardinals and the Cubs. The Cardinals are a very business-like team. I mean, we have our way, it's business-like. You don't see a whole lot of fun going on in Cardinal land with the players. Hayward would sit there and he's watching these young Cub players having a blast in the playoffs from the other dugout. That was a catalyst in him wanting to come to the Cubs. So I don't fault Hayward. I don't say we got ripped off because he was the outfielder that was the free agent for that year, and he just chose us. On the 26th, we re-signed Dexter Fowler to a 1-year, $8 million contract. News had got out that he had accepted 3 years for $33 million with Baltimore, and then suddenly the next day he walks into spring training with the Cubs. Even the Cubs players had no idea. So he was a big part of our team in 2015. We have him back for 2016. April 7th, the second game of the season, Kyle Schwarber tears his ACL, and he's out for the season. So it looks like, oh gosh, here we go. Our stud last year rookie played a half a year and knocked 16 home runs. He's out for the season. June 17th, we call up a catcher named Wilson Contreras, future St. Louis Cardinal in my book. So through June, we were the best team in baseball. We were 52-27. we needed bullpen help. On July 20th, we traded for Mike Montgomery from the Mariners, and Mike Montgomery is going to come into play here when I finish this up. On July 25th, we trade Gleyber Torres, who was one of our minor league players, great player at the time for the minor leagues, and he's been pretty good for the Yankees. We trade him for Aroldis Chapman. So suddenly our bullpen, we've got the best closer at the time at the back end of our bullpen. So we make the postseason. We won 103 games. We only lost 58. We defeated the Giants in the division series 3-1. In game 4, we were down 5-1 going into the top of the ninth. This is just the way this team was. Even though we were down 5-1 in San Francisco at the top of the ninth, we score 5 runs and we win that series, and we don't have to come back and play that game 5 in Chicago. Then we played the Dodgers in the National League Championship Series, and we win game 1 on a pinch hit grand slam in the 8th by Miguel Montero. That year, we actually carried 3 catchers on our roster. We carried Contreras for a half a year, Montero, and David Ross. Game 2, we have a 1-0 loss to the Dodgers, pitching matchup between Kershaw and Hendricks. And the only thing that Hendricks made a mistake on is he gave the home run to Adrian Gonzalez. Dodgers win 1-0. So the series goes to game 6. In game 6, we have a rematch of Hendricks versus Kershaw, and Hendricks shuts out Kershaw 5-0. So we're going to the World Series. This is how important going to the World Series was. When the Cubs won the game, I went out and got champagne. I didn't do that after they won the World Series, but just getting to the World Series for us was good enough. So game 1, we are feeling pretty good. We got Lester going. We're going to Cleveland, and we cannot hit Corey Kluber, and they hit Lester pretty good. They win 6-0. Game 2, we win 5-1. So we did what we needed to do, take 1 game in Cleveland. And Arrieta defeated Trevor Bauer. Game 3, we lost 1-0. Mike Tomlin defeated Hendricks. Hendricks scored, pitched great again. The Indians scored their only run in the 7th. 1-0. We're down 2-1. Game 4, we lose 7-2. Kluber defeats Lackey. And so we're down 3-1. We got 1 more game in Chicago, and it's not looking good for us. I'm almost like, okay, if we lose this, I'm okay. We made it to the World Series. Game 5, we win 3-2. Lester defeated Bauer, and we scored all of our runs in the 4th on a Bryant home run. Game 6 of the World Series, we're back in Cleveland. We won 9-3 behind Arrieta. We had home runs by Bryant. Addison Russell hit a grand slam. Rizzo homered. Chapman, who had pitched game 4 or game 5, was brought in game 6 in the 7th inning. So Chapman has been pitching 2 games in a row, and he's pitching more than he's ever pitched before in his life. Game 7, we are up 5-1, and we have home runs by Fowler. Led off the game with a home run. Baez hits a home run, and in the 5th, Lester's cruising. We're up 5-1, and he walks Santana with 2 outs. And for reasons that Madden has, and he's just put out a book and he explains those reasons, and I still don't agree with him. He said, nope, I'm bringing in Lester now. So he brought in Lester, and when you're not used to coming out of the bullpen, sometimes it could be a little difficult. Mm-hmm. Lester comes in. We have an error by Ross and a wild pitch. Next thing we know, Cleveland scored 2 runs, and it's now 5-3. Ross in the 6th makes up for his error. He hits a home run, makes it 6-3. And so with 2 outs in the 8th, we bring in a very tired Aroldis Chapman. You know he was tired because he wasn't hitting 103. He was hitting 98. 5 miles per hour makes a big difference, even though 98 is very hard. When you're used to a guy throwing 103 and it's coming out 98, the hitters get a little confident. So in the 8th, he gives up a 3-run home run to Rajai Davis to tie the game. People do not remember this. In the ninth, the Cubs don't score. Chapman goes back out in the ninth and he shuts Cleveland down. So it wasn't a complete disaster. In the ninth, he held them. It's 6-6. The rains come. Vincey goes to bed because he's upset. and we've talked about that already. And during the rain delay, Hayward called a players only meeting in the weight room. And he basically told them, you guys are so good. And I mean, he was telling the young kids, because that's all we had basically, you guys are so good. The hitters are so good. Just go out there and be yourselves and we're going to win this thing. So the rain stopped. Vincey gets out of bed because his wife says, well, the rain didn't last that long. So I get out of bed. And Schwarber, who did not come back to the Cubs until the World Series, he played one game in the Arizona Fall League when they put him on the World Series roster. He had a great World Series. He could only DH. He leads off the 10th with a hit. And so we bring in Albert Almora Jr. as a pinch runner. The next hitter is Bryant, and he hits a deep fly ball to center field, and it's caught. Almora, usually a player on first base is going to go halfway to second, ball is caught, he's going to trot back to first. Almora knew the way he's running after the ball, if he catches it and I'm on first, I can tag up and make it to second. And that's what he did. I watch a lot of baseball. I almost never see a player tag up from first to go to second. Almora did that, and it was a tremendous moment. Just one of those little things that's overlooked, but so smart, so intelligent. So Rizzo walks, and that brings up Zobrist. And Zobrist responds by doubling down the left field line off Brian Shaw, and that scores Almora. Shaw then intentionally walks Addison Russell to load the bases. Miguel Montero comes up, and he gets a hit. So we score another run, so it's 8-6. Bottom of the 10th, we bring in Carl Edwards Jr. He gets the first two outs with no problem. And I'm thinking, okay, we got it. And then he walks, I think he walked two hitters, and they scored a run on a hit. So with two outs, they are down to their last hitter, which was, and the guy's name is escaping me now, and I didn't put it in my notes. But anyway, it's 8-7. And Edwards apparently just didn't have it internally to finish this game up. Carl Edwards Jr. had nasty stuff, but he was a setup guy. He was your 6th, 7th inning guy. He was not a closer. We don't have a closer anymore. So what do? We bring in this left-hander that we'd gotten named Mike Montgomery, who never had much of a career. He was a tweener. He would be a spot starter. He'd be a reliever. We bring him in to close this game out. So he throws a curveball, and the player hits a little ground ball to Bryant, and Bryant goes to throw to Rizzo, and he slips. And I yelled profanity. Before the ball got to Rizzo, there was a few words I didn't have time to say. And instead of the ball going into the stands like I thought it would, it went right to Rizzo's face. He catches it, and we win. What people, I guess, don't understand, and I may have talked about this before, my grandfather died at 95 and never saw the Cubs win a World Series. My father was, I think, 75 at the time before he saw the Cubs win a World Series. I was 50 when I saw the Cubs win a World Series. We had people, fans, visiting graves, leaving Cardinal paraphernalia or Cub paraphernalia on the graves of their loved ones who had never seen this. The sheer weight of it made it so impressive. And when we had the parade in Chicago, they say that 5 million people showed up for that sucker. And I believe it. I know we should have had more cracks than that. We went to 3 straight division National League Division Championship series. We only won one. We only made it to one World Series and we won it. And you see that those players are still having impact. Schwarber, Castellanos, who was a Cub, he's still playing with the Phillies. Rizzo had a great series for the Yankees. So we still had a good team. They were so young that it just got stale so fast. I can't put my finger on why the team got stale. And so by the time we did the big sell-off last year, I was kind of ready for it. I was like, these players seem to be going through the motions. It just felt weird. And so now I've got some excitement again as a Cub fan. And, I believe in 2026, we are going to win this sucker again.
It'll be fun.
Really do think that we are going to win this thing again. But 2016 was a magical year. And for those of you who are not Cub fans and don't understand what we've been through as not just a fan base, but as an organization and as a national laughing stock, it was such a relief to finally get over that hump, finally win it, and finally just say we're the best there is.
I that was beautiful. I enjoyed every word of that. I just had 2 little things I wanted to add. When you guys got Joe Madden to coach, I was like, this is getting serious now. And then during the year, you picked up Chapman. Then were the moments I was like, I know they're good, but now this could happen. And you noticed Bryant and Rizzo and Baez and all those guys, but I grew to love Zobrist because he played any position. He'd do whatever they asked of him. And I've always loved those utility guys because they're a big part of the team. They don't get all the headlines. Well, the average fan wouldn't pay attention to an Edman or a Donovan for us or a Zobrist, but that guy was gold. And and my wife wanted the Cubs to win it. And I was like, what? Never. But when they won it, I was happy for the Cub fans. But I hate it for Cleveland. Cleveland's the other team that never gets to win it. They used to have a thing in right field across the street, how many days it was since the last World Series, and it got clicked back over to 0. You remember that? They'd always say 14,785 days since the last World Series. Well, now it's a few more. It's back up a little ways, but it's not like it was. And so they had to turn that over to 0. But what a year. That was great. 2016. They deserved it. It was a good year.
Well, JJ, tell everybody the movie that we are going to review today.
We are doing one of our favorite movies, The Bad News Bears, and we're doing the 1976 version. The 1976 version. Vince, you want me to go first, or?
That's fine.
All right, I'm going to go, and I'm just going to talk. I love stats, so I'm going to kind of do the stats and let Vince really hit the high points because he's dressed in that apparel, the great the Bad News Bears jersey. In 1976, I did go to the theater and seen this. I seen it at the drive-in. They tried to remake this movie, and it didn't do anything with Billy Bob Thornton. I think the magic of this movie, some of the stars, Walter Matthau, love Walter Matthau. It only took $9 million to make this movie. Now, remember, this is 1976. $9 million was a lot of money back then, but it made $42.3 million. It was a huge success. Tatum O'Neal was in the movie, and she was just coming off of Paper Moon, which she won the Academy Award for. And it was Vic Morrow was the other coach. I love Vic Morrow, a very established, very good actor who's been in a lot of good movies. And then you had this kid, Vince, you made allude to this. The kids in the movie, like nowadays, they can all sing show tunes, and they have a rap sheet of every commercial they've been in. Well, the kids they put in this movie, they were just regular kids. But they did have one other actor, this Jackie Earl Haley. He was the guy, the bad boy on the motorcycle. And he was in several movies as well. But basically, it's just a redemption story. You know, in the 70s, movies were a little more gritty, a little more real to life, how people talked, and it wasn't pretty. Before that, everything was all Pollyanna and, you know, gosh gee and that kind of stuff. And then the 70s, everything got pretty dark. And so it's basically about a guy down on his luck, alcoholic, pool cleaner, ex-minor leaguer, that he gets forced into coaching these kids that, and I think we can all identify with this. These are kids that, you know, they're not the star kids. And these other teams had great sponsors. Vince will get in that later, nice uniforms. And these other kids were just the kids nobody else wanted. And they got Walter Matthau could care less to coach them. And it's a great story. It made me laugh in a lot of places. I don't think it made me cringe at all. There was one scene that was very tearful where Tatum O'Neal, he got Tatum O'Neal to come onto the team because she was very talented, and everybody made fun of her because she was a girl, but she could pitch. And she and Walter Matthau had, her mom and Walter Matthau had went out, and she was hoping maybe they could get back together. And Walter Matthau basically threw beer in her face.
Yeah.
And said, it'll never happen. Give it up. And she runs off and she's crying. And that's a very touching moment. So it had laughs. It was well written. I think Burt Lancaster's son wrote this movie. I read that somewhere, and I love Burt Lancaster. Let's see. It spawned 2 more movies. As anytime Hollywood has any kind of success, there's always sequels. And of course, those movies didn't do anything. They didn't have Walter Matthau in them, because I think he was the linchpin of that movie. His name was Morris Buttermaker. And you always hear everybody go, Buttermaker. And that's a great name for an ex-minor league alcoholic pool cleaner. That's a perfect name. Anyway, it's just about a bunch of misfits. And really, it's a redemption story because, of course, Walter Matthau eventually, winning isn't everything. And the kids grow to love him, and he's kind of the king of the misfits, and he guides these kids to a good season. Of course, he goes out and gets a couple of ringers too. If you haven't seen the movie, I really recommend it. I think you'll like it. It may not be for kids. There's a lot of language in it, but it's a very good story and a good movie. And I think Walter Matthau did a great job in it. And I'm going to turn the rest of it over to Vince, because this is one of his favorites, and he's got some really good takes on it. So
I have great memories because I was 10 years old, and me and my buddy Terry went to go see it after a Little League game. We went to the theater in Roxana, Illinois, which I think a church owns that theater now. And we watched the Bad News Bears. The premise behind the movie is there is a wealthy, I think he's like politician type person. They never really get into what he does, but he has sued this very competitive league. In today's world, it would be a traveling team type thing, yes. But it's a very competitive league. He sues that his son could be on this, can play in this league. So they have to form a new team on the fly. And so they get all these misfits who really don't belong in this league. If you'll notice, every other team is lily white, but the Bears, they have Hispanic players. They have the only African-American in the league. They have a Jewish player. And then they have the, what do you want to call him? Lupus, the kid who snacks on his nose candy, you know. Yes. So I guess you call him a spaz or whatever, you know.
Yeah,
they're just not ready for this kind of competition. And whenever I was in literature class, I took a lot of literature in high school and college, and there's 2 things we look for, you know. What's the story? And what's the author trying to say? The Bad News Bears is a little bit deeper than just a movie about, you know, it's about class. It's about privilege. It's about the people who you don't necessarily want to see in society. Some segments of society, they want to turn their backs at these people, but they are forced to interact with the alcoholic pool cleaner, the kids who other kids don't like. They're forced to interact with them and compete with them. And what I love about the movie is that Walter Matthau is a great actor. That's why the movie works. Tatum O'Neal is a great actor. That's why the movie worked. Jackie Earle Haley, who plays Kelly, the motorcycle kid, he's a legitimate actor. About 15 years ago, he was actually nominated for an Academy Award. So he's legit. They do the bulk of the heavy lifting, and Vic Morrow, they do the bulk of the heavy lifting in this movie. The kids, though, they just let them be bad actors. But growing up in the 70s, where I did in East Alton, where we were a little grittier, we used the bad language, and we probably grew up a little bit faster than what we should have. It really resonated with me. And one of the things that I really like is that when they tried to remake it with Billy Bob Thornton, they had to sanitize it because it's just a different time frame. This movie is not sanitized. There are racial slurs. There are things that you just can't say today. And I'm not saying that that's right. We should go back to that, but it just encapsulates a time in history that most of us are past. So when I look back at it, growing up, kind of in lower class as far as my family was.
Same here.
But we never had African Americans in my school district. I never had Jewish people. We had no Hispanics. We had a few Catholics, but we were pretty much lily white. And so when I watched the movie as a kid, I thought, I wonder if we would ever play a team that, I didn't know the word then, but had any kind of diversity, which I didn't until I got to high school, started playing ball in high school. But it's a fascinating movie. And one of the things I love about the movie is the soundtrack. It is classical music, and it works in this gritty movie. For some reason, you have the classical music working with this movie, and I just love the soundtrack to it. And at the end, when they're both competing, the Bears and the Yankees, and of course the Yankees are going to be the
bad guy,
the antagonists. But both coaches, Buttermaker and oh gosh, what's Vic Morrow's character's name? Anyway, he's the manager of the Yankees. They are both spiraling down into that winning is more important than anything, and they're relaying that to their kids, and both teams are getting kind of, you could see, is this worth it? Is this what we're here for? This is not fun. This is it's almost a pissing contest between our two coaches, And when the Vic Morrow character, his son, who's played by Brandon Cruz, who used to be on the courtship of Eddie's father.
Oh, that's right.
When he comes out and he slaps his son for trying to hit Engelbert, through at his head, and then Engelbert hits a little ground rack, and the kid just holds the ball while Engelbert hits a little league home run because the pitcher refuses to throw the ball. And then he takes the ball after the Bears score the runs, and he goes up to his father and just drops the baseball in front of him and leaves. If that was me as a father, I'd leave with my son. Hey, I really screwed up here. We need to talk. But this was the 70s. This was a little more machismo back then. He stayed with his team. Mom left with the son, but the coach stayed with his team. And that's when the Walter Matthau character, even through his alcoholism, realized, oh my gosh, this is a kid's game, and we're treating. He never comes out and says that, but you see it because he starts saying, okay, Lupus, you're going in, so and so you're going in. They're like, what are you putting these people in for? Even the parent of who paid him to coach the team, said, "What do you put these kids in for? They can win." He's like, "Because everybody's going to play on my team." Then they almost win it. And of course they lose. And, it's a great movie. It's a fun movie to watch, but it also has a lot to say about the social commentary of the times that still spill over into today. So
I agree.
if you haven't seen the Bad News Bears, go see it. And then get the uniform and wear it.
Yes.
Wear it out in public and wear it proud.
Chico's Bell Bondsman.
Chico's Bell Bonds. Yeah.
That was their sponsor. Yeah,
sponsor.
There you go. There
Because
you go.
all the good sponsors like Pizza Hut and Denny's were already taken. That's
right.
We had to do. So, hey, let's open up some baseball cards.
You got it. I'm doing the Fleer 1990 baseball. You've been going old school, so I thought, what the heck? I'll go old school too. I remember when Fleer came back out. Let me get this in here. Oh, they've got a action series, the Atlanta Braves emblem, and there's some trivia on the back. It's too dark in here for me with this umbrella. I can't read the statistics.
So that's right before they made that incredible run.
Yes, that's right.
Because 91, they went to the World Series. In 1990, they were a last place team. So
yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. Hey, here's a name from the past. Padres second baseman Bip Roberts. Remember Bip? Yeah, Cincinnati Red player too. Jamie Navarro, Brewers.
Yeah.
I love those Brewer hats. The MB with, it looks like a glove. Love that emblem they have. Steve Vendrosia, Bedrock.
Oh.
Yeah, pitched for the Giants back then. How about that? That's what's so great about these cards. Oh, here you go. And I love this guy. A Chicago Cub. I love him. One of the greatest arms. Shortstop, Sean Dunston. That dude had an arm. Man, he'd gun you out. Oh, big man. I like this guy. Come off the bench a lot. Started a lot. Played a lot. Rob Deere. Nice career. Nice career. He had a nice career.
One day I had a discussion once on a group with baseball fans. And I presented an argument that without steroids, Mark McGwire was spiraling to be Rob Deere. And I got crucified. But I can break it down.
I know. I'm with you. I know. Well, when you talk to a fan of a team, sometimes they look through those fan eyes and they don't want to look at some of that, but you're right. Oh, I agree. And Rob Deere had a nice career. Here's a guy, one of the nasty boys, but he was with the Mets then, Randy Myers.
Former Cub.
Oh, see, I did not know that. Vince, these cards, I don't know what happened. They're making them so small, I can't even read the backs anymore. Corey Schneider. I remember when he came up, he was supposed to be the next big thing. Had a nice career, but he was a good
rookie year for the Indians. Guardians now.
A player. Oh, now I like this guy. Had a great career. He's probably in for your arch enemy, the White Sox. Robin Ventura.
No.
And I always think of Nolan Ryan when I think of Robin Ventura. But he had it's like the Bill Buckner through the legs. There was so much more. But that's what you think of when you think of Robin Ventura, or people of our age.
He was an all-star. He's a good player.
Yes. Frank DePino, I sort of remember him.
Yeah,
he's a Cardinal right there.
Yeah. He also pitched for the Astros, I believe.
And I got one more here. Todd Benzinger.
Okay, with the Reds.
Yeah, with the Reds. Had a nice career. I'll be honest, before Paul O'Neill kind of went to New York, I kind of thought of him and Paul O'Neill in the same breath, kind of the same type of player. People probably thinking, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, but they both came up similar times, and I really, for a while, couldn't differentiate either one of them. But then when Paul O'Neill went to the Yankees, he became a legend then.
Yeah. Well, I am going to open 1992 Upper Deck.
Ooh, I love the Upper Decks. Nice pictures in those.
if I can open these.
Well, they had that, I don't know, that harder stuff to rip. It doesn't tear.
Yeah, it's kind of a foil thing.
Yeah.
My gosh. Starting off with the Hall of Famer, Wade Boggs.
Love the Chicken Man, Wade Boggs.
You ever seen that episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where they try to recreate Boggs drinking all the beer on the plane ride?
I have seen that one. Yes, very good.
I got 2 checklists here. Always disappointed when I would get
That's a
one to one
disappointment.
checklist.
Yeah.
Oh, Kurt Miller. I don't know who he is.
I don't either. I'm gonna put him in the no neck category.
Oh, Wilfredo Cordero had a pretty good
oh yes.
career with the Expos. Oh my gosh, I'd forgotten this guy existed. Seth Landrum with the Cubs. Barely came up for a cup of coffee.
Yeah, that name escapes me.
Former Cardinal, Pat Borders.
Oh yes, a Toronto Blue Jay.
Blue Jays, yeah. Well, look who I got. Bip Roberts.
Bip Roberts is everywhere.
It's the Bip Roberts day.
Fast man. He was a fast player.
Oh, I love this player. Very gritty for the Cubs. Doug DeCenzo.
Yes. Oh yeah.
I can't believe this.
Is it not Billy
That's
Hatcher?
the fielder with the chicken.
With the chicken, Hall of Famer. The chicken. Yes.
Awesome. Oh, very good player. For the Twins, Kent Herbeck.
Oh, yes. Oh,
Hometown
yeah.
hero.
Very good player. Very good player.
Uh-oh. Pedro Guerrero.
Pedro Guerrero. The first game I went at Wrigley Field, the left field bleachers just dogged him out the whole game.
Oh. Darren Dalton, all-star catcher for the Phillies, who was married to a Hooters girl who was like the Billboard Hooters girl. So
Darren Dalton.
Much respect.
Hey, I'm his fan club.
I swear we don't plan this. Paul O'Neill. Cincinnati
O'Neill.
right there.
Yes, Paul O'Neill.
Oh, and you brought this man up the other day, the Cobra, Dave Parker with the Blue Jays.
Love it. I've had talked about him now 3 weeks in a row. We've mentioned Parker.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are in November. Next time that we broadcast, the World Series will be over. And right now, it looks like it is 0-0 in the middle of the third. Of course, most of you are going to watch this days later. You're going to say, yeah, we know. But anyway, JJ, you have a great week.
You too, sir.
I will try, and we will see you all next week. Thank you.
Take care.